It's time for Dear Jane. Now, the other day, Marcie said, let's start things a little differently. And so I'm trying to think of a creative way. How about we do it this way, Marcie?
Okay.
We begin today's podcast seeing how long we can go rhyming. So welcome to Dear Jane today. It's time. Oh, no.
To enter the foray
Frey, as we talk about life. Oh, now that's a hard one.
amidst all the strife.
Oh my goodness. You're on fire.
I'm good at this game.
Are you really? Oh man, that is fantastic. So stay tuned as we have a good conversation. So much for that.
Hey, you know what is really cool about this rhyming game is our guest today runs an organization that the name rhymes with itself.
That's exactly you're sharp as a tack. Man, are you on the ball? That's right. We're going to talk about Embrace Grace today. Amy Ford is going to join us. We're going to talk about how ways that the church and pregnancy centers can be more helpful to women and men who find themselves facing an unplanned pregnancy. So looking forward to that. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. Don't forget to just spread the word about pro-life podcasting. Dear Jane, we really appreciate it, and we thank you for doing that. Let's hear from our sponsor real quick today. Today's episode brought to us by Choose Life Marketing.
Choose Life Marketing will help you reach your organization, reach the abortion-minded woman. We are talking a lot about that woman today with our guest, Amy Ford, and Choose Life Marketing can help your organization better connect to her. So if you run a pregnancy resource center or maybe a maternity home or another organization designed to help women facing unplanned pregnancies, Choose Life Marketing can be your partner in that. They offer marketing strategies, marketing solutions. They'll build you a beautiful website and then help women get to your website. They do email campaigns. They can even help you raise the money to be able to afford marketing, which is so important in today's day of social media and connectivity and just lots of other organizations that are also vying for that abortion-minded woman's mind and attention. So be sure to check out our friends, Choose Life Marketing, chooselifemarketing.com to get started to up your marketing today.
That was pretty good. Now you want to try to do it rhyming?
Nope, I'm good.
No.
I'm all out of rhymes for the day.
Gotcha. All right. Amy Ford, who is the co-founder and president of Embrace Grace, is our guest today on Dear Jane.
Amy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, for people who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got involved in the pro-life movement?
Yes, I had my own unexpected pregnancy. I grew up in church, had an awesome family, but I didn't have a relationship with the Lord. And so I found myself pregnant. I was so scared. I grew up knowing abortion was wrong, but in that moment, fear just got a hold of me. And it was like all I could think about was maybe an abortion is a quick fix that I can deal with the consequences of a broken heart later. And so me and the father of the baby, we scheduled the abortion, paid for it, and I went in to have the abortion. And when they were explaining to me how they were going to do it, I ended up actually hyperventilating and passing out in the abortion room. And when I came to, one of the nurses was fanning me, she was giving me a drink of water. She said, I was crying, really hard. And she just said, you're too emotionally distraught to make this decision today. You can come back another day, but today you're not getting an abortion. And so I went back out in the waiting room and told the father of the baby, we're still pregnant. And so we just decided in that moment, okay, if we are going to be homeless, all these crazy thoughts, we thought our life was over, our dreams were over, that our parents were going to hate us forever, all of that. But we thought, okay, we'll figure out, how to push through all of this. So we went and told our parents. It wasn't as bad as we thought it would be. They definitely were disappointed in the timing, but we also knew we wanted to get married someday. We were high school sweethearts, but not necessarily in the order that ended up happening. But we ended up getting married when I was 16 weeks pregnant. And the pastor that had led my husband to the Lord years before we asked him if he would marry us, and he said, "No, I'm sorry, because you've sinned, I will not bless this marriage." And we were just like, wow, like we're such horrible people that we can't be married and be like blessed by a pastor. And we found someone else that would marry us, but it definitely felt like a scarlet letter experience, that people, we just were wondering, what are people thinking, and just so much shame. And but then after that, we tried to go back to church, and it's like the elephant in the room, and people don't know whether to say congratulations or I'm sorry. And then so they don't say anything, and then you just feel alone in a crowd of people. And so we just kind of stopped going for a really long time. And we ended up having a son, Jess, and he's amazing. He's 20, actually just turned 26 2 days ago, and he majored in theology at ORU. He got his MBA. He is passionate about the Lord. He got married and his high school sweetheart. She's a labor and delivery nurse, and he's like out there changing the world. I'm so super proud of him. And they now just had their first baby just a couple weeks ago. And I just can't imagine my life without him. Like, it was so close that he wouldn't be here. And to think even now their little girl, Holly, wouldn't be here. And so I'm so thankful in that crazy last minute moment that I ended up choosing life. And I'm also thankful that I had a nurse that kind of paused and was like, no, you're not going to do this, because I've heard so many people have abortion stories, and they're like, that was nothing like my experience. Like, no one cared, that I was crying hysterically or whatever. And so, but whenever my son was 2, that pastor that wouldn't marry us, he actually did call out of the blue, and he asked for forgiveness. He felt like it was his worst mistake in pastoring history that he had ever made. And my husband loves this pastor. He was like, yes, we forgive you. We love you so much. And then one more part of that story is when my son was 16, that pastor asked me to come speak at his church. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and this pastor's in Austin. And he asked me to come out there, and he was very open with his congregation about what he had done years before. He told them our combined story of, like, he said, he said he had a Pharisee heart and a religious spirit, and I wouldn't marry, this couple. And now they started this ministry called Embrace Grace. And so he was very open with everyone before I got there. And I came, I spoke, I did my thing. But then after that, he asked me to come back on the platform in front of the whole congregation. And he also asked my son, Jess, who again was 16 at the time, he asked him to come on the platform as well. And he said, Amy, years ago, I asked your husband for forgiveness, but I never really asked you, like, will you forgive me for what I did, 16 years ago? And I was like, of course, love you so much. Like, you're amazing, all of that. And then, then after that, he looked at my son, 16, in front of the whole church. And he said, will you forgive me for planting seeds of your heart, in your heart? And while you were in your mother's womb, I rejected you. Will you forgive me? And my son, Jess, in front of the whole church says, I forgive you. And it was such a powerful moment in that room. Like, you could feel church wounds being lifted. The fact that the pastor would humble himself in that way was just so amazing. And I think healing for a lot of people that just have church wounds and all of that, to see that he did that. But going through all of that just made me think of the power that the church has. And even though when I almost had my abortion, I went to church every single week, even though I didn't have a relationship with the Lord. And so why did I not think that the church was a safe place to go to for prayer, wisdom, guidance, counsel, support? It was the last place I wanted to go to. And the abortion rate is very high in the church, just like it is outside. So women are in our congregations and they're having abortions because they don't really know where to turn to. And then also, no one ever told me what a pregnancy center was. Like, I'd gone to church my whole life. I had no idea that there are pregnancy centers that are totally free. Even back then, 26 years ago, they were everywhere. A free service, you get a free sonogram and pregnancy test, and they counsel you, and they encourage you and help get you resourced, to things that you might need in order to feel empowered in your life decision. And so why didn't the church tell me about that? And I just was like, I would love to change that. I would love to change it so that the church can be a resource for these moms. And so we started Embrace Grace, which is a support group system in churches all over the nation for girls with unplanned pregnancies. And so we want the church to be one of the first places a girl runs to instead of the last because of shame and guilt. And so we have a 12-week curriculum where churches can host these groups, and then the pregnancy centers refer the moms to the Embrace Grace support groups, and they get a baby shower, they get loved on, they meet other girls going through similar situations. It's really a sweet and empowering ministry. So we have over 1,200 groups in all 50 states that have Embrace Grace groups in churches.
When you reach out to churches and encourage them to become involved, what's a common pushback you hear?
Well, when we first started as a small group back in 2008, what we would hear is the big thing was, this is condoning sin. This is rewarding bad behavior. Maybe they don't deserve a brand new baby shower. They deserve more like gently used stuff. They really struggled with the grace concept of loving on them. They think that we were saying it was okay, to be pregnant or condoning it. And so talking through all that was the big thing when we first started. Now that's not as much, still in some of the smaller towns, but now it's more of pastors are like, well, we don't have pregnant women in our church. And we're like, yeah, you do. Like statistically it says that you do have pregnant women in your church. So trying to change their perspective on that, but say it is just the tiniest church that has like 20 people and they're all senior citizens and you actually don't. Then to change your perspective as a pastor of like, this is an outreach, go partner with your local pregnancy centers. Tell them you want their clients to come to your church. It sounds like you need some young people in your church, some fresh life in your church. Invite them in and look at it more as an outreach to your community. And it's not just women inside your church, it's going outside the walls and then inviting them in to be a part of your spiritual family. So, because so many churches are like, oh, well, we already give to our pregnancy centers, which is super important and so amazing. But how can we as a church like disciple them and love on them and help them get over that fear of walking into the church, especially in that situation? Because they already have their preconceived ideas usually of what that experience is going to look like. So we already have that mental hurdle that we have to get over or help them get over when we invite them. But I spoke at a women's pastors conference 2 weeks ago, and it was about 300 women ministry leaders. And I asked them all, raise your hand if your church would welcome in someone with an unplanned pregnancy and y'all would, walk with them and all of that. Literally every single one raised their hand. And I was like, that's awesome. Okay, raise your hand if women in your community know that you would do that. Like, know that you're a safe place to go to. And not one raised their hand. And I think that that's what Embrace Grace can help with is there is a special place just for these moms that can go to a special program. And because we work through the pregnancy centers, they get these free love boxes that we give out. It's basically like a gift that's an invitation. So when they have a girl with an unplanned pregnancy that just finds out she's pregnant, the pregnancy center gives her one of our love boxes, and they're totally free to the pregnancy centers as long as they have an Embrace Grace group within 30 miles of their center. They give it to this mom. It has like a onesie that says best gift ever, and it's got a book about being brave and fearless and all kinds of testimonies of women that have chose life in really hard situations and how God did miracles in their life. It's got the invitation and a few other things, but that's the invitation tool, and it has the information about Embrace Grace at a local church near them. So they're giving those out to the girls, and then the girls reach back out to Embrace Grace to get connected to a group.
That's amazing. I love that model because it helps everyone. Obviously, it helps the girl or the woman who needs that support, but it also helps the church understand where some of their gaps are in needing to be that place that women can come to and receive support. What are some of the things that lessons you've learned over the last, I think, 12 or so years since you started Embrace Grace, and how have you seen the church change in that time?
Well, yeah, definitely. Like I had said before, the like from when 2008, the big thing was grace. Like I remember one lady came up to me and specifically, and she actually was at a pregnancy center conference, which is kind of odd too. And she was like, I'm having a hard time understanding like why they don't just get, like, why do they need brand new? They made decisions to get themselves in this situation. Why do they need brand new gifts and things like that? And so I said, have you ever read about the prodigal son story in the Bible, and how, he had two sons, and one went off and spent all his dad's inheritance that he had gotten, spent it all on wasting it with prostitutes and partying and all kinds of stuff. And he literally had nothing left, and he was eating the leftovers of the pigs. And he was like, if I go back home, maybe I could eat the leftovers of the servants. That's a little better than the pigs. And so he decided to come back home. And I love, my favorite part of the story is it says, and while he was a long way off, the father ran to him, and he had his servants put a robe on his back and a ring on his finger. And he said, son, you were lost, but now you're found. And that a lot of these girls are a long way off, still, but they've turned towards home, towards their heavenly Father, and we can be there and throw the party and celebrate with them. Or we could be like the other brother. And if you remember, the other brother was like, well, that's not fair. You're going to throw him a party after all that he's done, when I've basically been, your perfect kid, and you haven't done this for me. When the father said, son, you have everything that you need in me. So come and let's celebrate that your brother was lost and now he's found. And we've seen so many times, like even the night of the baby showers, that they're so overwhelmed with love that women went out and had blankets monogrammed with their babies' names, or wrapped everything in a theme that they love, whether it's zebra or nautical or whatever it might be that they love for their baby. We have seen salvations happen even at baby showers. We've seen the baby dad get saved because he can't even believe that all of these people that she's never met before came around and bought their baby gifts, because it's God's kindness that leads us to repentance, and it's his goodness that draws us to his side. It's love that changes people, and we can't talk about what we believe or how we vote and all of that without love, because we are a clanging cymbal if we're just talking about what we believe but not actually doing something about it. And that we say we are a pro-love organization, that pro-life is a stance, it's a belief system, it's maybe a way you vote, but pro-love is the action. And we want to engage and empower the church to get involved. Like, we can't just say, vote a certain way and then say, good luck, hope it works out for you. We need to be with them and walking alongside them and helping them. And the cool thing about the church is, yes, there's the building of the church, but we are the church as a people. And so God puts certain strengths and gifts and talents inside each of us, not so we have a better job and we make more money and all of that, which is all great, but it is to do the good works that he's called us to do. So what is it that he puts inside of us that we can help a mom feel empowered in her decision? I mean, I've seen the church organically help moms by like helping her with her HR, like trying to find a better job, or her resume, or someone else saying, I can help babysit while she goes and does this job, or I can help with her accounting or her financial. So many of them get like tote the note cars because they don't know about credit and things like that. My husband is great about helping moms with that. And we all have something we can do to help her feel empowered in her decision, when she could say, why would I feel like I need to have an abortion when there's so much love and support and out there for me? There's so many resources out there for me. Why would I feel like I need to do that? We want to make abortion unthinkable. The political part is important too, illegal, all of that, but unthinkable is where our focus is, that we want to empower these moms.
Thinking of your example about how all the women ministers all talked about how accepting they would be and helpful, but then they haven't really touted it. They almost, you almost could say their churches, I don't want to say hide it, but they don't promote it. Mm-hmm. And I'm comparing that to, we're coming off an election season here recently, and there's this ongoing debate on what's the church's role to talk about abortion and life and that sort of thing. And that's sort of an ongoing battle. Let me run this by you and see what you guys think. I heard a sermon here recently. I don't agree with it, but I thought it was thought provoking. The minister was basically saying we have to be careful because everything political or even related is so divisive that you don't want to ruin your witness. And so you don't want to say something or do something or offer a ministry. I'm really paraphrasing here, and he wasn't coming at this from some sort of moral superiority. You just got to be careful, because if you turn somebody off, and then 2 months from now, you're trying to tell them the good news. And his illustration was more like, if you get involved in some of the online nonsense or you share something that's questionable or whatever, you've kind of brought your witness into question. But it relates to, these churches, the church's reluctance to sort of go there on this issue. What do you think about that? I guess it gets back to this reluctance and this hesitance that we see so often among churches. Even the ones that say how accepting and loving they would be, they just kind of do it real quietly, and so nobody notices.
Yeah, well, I know that it's good to have both truth and grace in all of this, but I know for us, we are very much known more for what we're for than what we're against. Like, if you look at all of our messaging and our branding and all of that, it's like we are for life. We are for an empowered life, a thriving life. We are not pro-birth. We are pro-whole life. And then when we do have to get into abortion as a trauma, it hurts women to always have something on the other side of it to say, and we have an abortion healing group. If I'm always encouraging churches, you need to have abortion healing groups at your churches. And there's so many great programs out there, like Surrendering the Secret and Forgiven and Set Free, all of these great ones. They, just like they have an Embrace Grace group, they also need an abortion healing group. So when they talk about it, because it does bring up really hard and emotional feelings in women and different emotions that you have. I know some of the most healed people you will ever meet, but there are days where it is hard. And so to have and we have healing for you. Like, God wants to heal your heart. I know one time I spoke at this big conference, and it was an arena of 10,000 women. It was a quick 10-minute interview where the pastor's wife that was running this conference, it was out in Fort Worth, Texas, she interviewed me because Embrace Grace started from this conference 10 years before. So she was asking about Embrace Grace. I was all done. So then right before, she was like, "Thank you so much, Amy, for being on here today. We loved hearing your story, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Wait, can I say one more thing?" And I just felt like the Holy Spirit, prompted me. And I said, there are 10,000 women in this arena, which means most likely about 2,500 of you have experienced an abortion. And God wants you to know that He loves you and He sees you and He wants to heal you. He even wants to start the healing process in you this weekend. And also that that Revelation 12:11 says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Like, go and tell someone that what we bring into the light is what God can heal. And you are not disqualified from ministry. You are qualified for ministry, and He wants to heal you. And you can go be the person you wish you had in your life when you made that decision. Who did you need? And you can go be that for someone else. It was about 30 seconds. I was done. We went back it was such a big arena. We had 2 booths, one on each end of the conference center. And after that, they broke, and we went to the booth, and there were so many women that were at our booth. Some wouldn't say a word. Some had mascara streaming down their face. But I remember specifically there were 3 women that came, and they all had matching T-shirts. They were sisters, and they were doing the fun girls conference weekend. Well, they were literally holding up the girl in the middle, and she was weeping. And they brought her to me, and they said she wanted to meet you. She was just really touched by what you said, and she's wanted to say something to you. So she's trying to collect her emotions, And finally, I will never forget, she looked at me with tears streaming down her face, and she said, "You mean to tell me that God can use me?" Mm-hmm. And it was like no one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever said even the word abortion before on a all these women are sitting in the pews thinking they're the only one in the world, only Christian in the world that has that in their past, when actually, statistically, there's a ton. And we can start a Me Too movement with abortion and abortion healing, like to say, I went through this and it's really hard. And free people. Like if we can help set these women free, the ripple effect of it is beautiful, because we have so many women that lead Embrace Grace groups that have had an abortion and they want to be that person they wish they had. I hear so many times of like, if I had had a group like this when I made my abortion decision, my life would look a lot different than it does now. And so I just feel like when pastors talk about it, like it can't just be like abortion is wrong, abortion is wrong, abortion is wrong, which it is, but also saying it from a healing and redemptive, and to give them permission that this is a place to heal, and they give them permission to, that you're not, this isn't the unforgivable sin. Like God forgives. And now let's be the change we want to see in the world with this issue.
I love stories like that of women, people hearing truth for the first time and hearing that there's freedom and forgiveness and healing for them. And I think your response right off the bat, that it has to be grace and truth. It can't be one or the other. It has to be both, is so true. For people who maybe are looking at the pro-life movement, they want to get involved, but they're not really sure how. Maybe they don't even know like all the different aspects of the pro-life movement. They maybe think it's still just like picketing outside of abortion clinics. What would your advice be to them to find not just like how to get involved in general, but a place where they can utilize their gifts and talents? What's a good framework for them to even begin thinking about that? How do they find their place in the movement?
Well, for sure, I would say to just even having an awareness of the movement. Like what's so crazy is when we started Embrace Grace as a nonprofit in 2012, we started as a small group in 2008. 2012, we became a nonprofit. And when we became a nonprofit, I didn't think we're starting a pro-life organization. Like it wasn't on my radar. If someone would have said, I work at a pro-life organization, I would have assumed it was picketing, because that was the only framework or context that I knew, only because that's the only thing the media shows. Like that's the pro-life movement, is someone screaming outside of an abortion clinic. So we started and we're just thinking, we're just helping girls with unplanned pregnancies. We're not, and I wasn't super political. I just was young and I didn't know much about that world. So in 2014, CareNet, which is a pregnancy center training, conference that it's an organization, but they have a conference every year where pregnancy center workers fly in from all over and get training and equipping. They asked me to come speak at their conference. I was like, I've literally never heard of you. I don't even know what a pregnancy center is, but sure, I'll come. They were coming to my town, Dallas, and they said, we'll give you a free booth if you speak. So I came. We were such a baby organization. We hurried up and got some pull-up banners and all of that. And when I went and I started walking around and seeing the vendors, which is basically the other booths that were there, and they were all pro-life organizations. They were grants for single moms. They were maternity homes for homeless pregnant women. There were all of these boots on the grounds organizations that are serving women in the movement. And I was like, how have I gone to church my whole life, and there is a whole world of resources and help that I had no idea existed? I almost had an abortion and I had no idea that this world existed. And so then I start digging into it, and then I kind of figure out, once I started following like all the pro-life organizations, and then realize, okay, there are some pro-life organizations that I don't completely align with. If they're very aggressive and mean and hurtful and shaming and condemning, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not it, which is why we kind of use the word pro-love a lot. But I wrote a book actually called Help Her Be Brave, Discover Your Place in the Pro-Life Movement, for this very reason, because so many women that I talk to don't know that this movement exists. In fact, the last 5 or 6 employees that I've hired at this organization, which is a pro-life organization, and they are pro-life, we do extensive interviews. When we do the onboarding process, the last 5 or 6 didn't know what a pregnancy center was. They've gone to church their whole life. They didn't know. So we made going to a pregnancy center and getting a tour as part of the onboarding, as to know the movement. So I would highly encourage you to do that. But I wrote that book so that it gives you such a broad picture of the movement, and it shows lots of practical stories of how people have used the gifts inside of them to start somewhere, whether it's leading an Embrace Grace group or serving at a pregnancy center or helping Embrace Legacy, is just for dads, helping disciple young single dads. or it's helping a mom practically with her schooling or education or transportation, or I mean, there's so many creative ways that whether it's through an organization or just individually a girl that you meet, which I meet girls everywhere. There's so much, and once you find it, it's so amazing to see like the transformation process happen in these lives that they feel seen and heard. Like the first single mom in the Bible is Hagar, and she refers to God as the God who sees. And her son Ishmael his name means God hears, and his heart is for single moms. Like we as his hands and feet and eyes and all of that, like we want to represent the God who sees and see them and walk alongside them. So definitely Help Her Be Brave book. Also, one more thing, helpherbebrave.com. I actually have a little quiz, and you could take a little quiz on helpherbebrave.com and answer all the questions, and it will email you some ideas of how to get involved. It's like a personality quiz. So if you're administrative, or if you're more nurturing, or if you're very strategic, or if you're an advocate and a big personality, kind of like having a podcast show like you guys do, there are ideas based on your personality, and it gets emailed to you. So it's a great place to start as well, based on what the giftings God put inside of you.
Before we let you go, we like to ask this question from time to time, especially with people who have a personal story like you do. If say some young woman or a young man were to come across this podcast and they find themselves facing an unplanned pregnancy, what would you say to them?
I would say that God chose you out of all the women and men in the whole entire world to be this baby's mom or dad. Whether you choose to place your baby for adoption or whether you choose to parent, he chose you guys. So he will equip you with everything you need to walk this out. Get connected to an Embrace Grace group or Embrace Legacy group for dads. You are not alone. You are not the only person in the world that has gone through something like this. And there are miracles on the other side of this. Just have a higher up view on it and take it one day at a time. You're going to be totally fine, and get yourself connected to a pregnancy center in your area.
EmbraceGrace.com is the website
Yes.
if you want to learn more about what's offered and the options available to you. Amy, we really do appreciate you joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again for listening to Dear Jane.
You can follow along every day on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And make sure you also are subscribed so you never miss an episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. Ring that bell so you're notified and you never miss an episode.